After spending a year apart, Chandler Smith appears to be headed back to Toyota. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. I've made it to Miami, and we've already got some breaking NASCAR free agency news to break down. But first, I thought this was interesting yesterday. The race lengths, the distances for next year's 2 Chicago street races have been revealed. Next year's Xfinity and Cup Series races on the streets of Chicago will be called the Loop 110 and the Grant Park 165, respectively. The Xfinity race will be 50 laps, the Cup race will be 75. This year's inaugural Chicago Street Cup Series race was supposed to be 100 laps, but ultimately got cut to 75 midway through due to weather delays and impending darkness. So I guess for next year's race, NASCAR's trying to get a head start over any weather. I was in the stands this year, and honestly, I thought the Chicago Street race was the perfect length. Now, I think the distance wound up being 78 laps after an overtime, but still, I thought the length of this year's event was perfect. But we have to consider the conditions. We saw a lot of spins and cautions, especially early on in that race, I think due to the wet track. Let's assume next year's race is perfectly dry. Someone eventually is gonna barrel off into the tire barriers, but probably not as frequently as we saw this season. We probably won't get as many cautions, so there's the possibility that next year's Chicago street race will fly by. That could be jarring, especially for longtime NASCAR fans who are used to 3.5, 4-hour events. But personally, I don't mind it in this case. This is a special event meant to appeal to non-traditional NASCAR audiences, maybe the same folks who are tuning into more F1 races these days. Those races are over in 90 minutes. The Chicago street race is very unique. I don't mind the shorter distance. More action in a tighter package. That's not the main thing I wanted to discuss today. The big news entering this weekend, Matt Weaver of Sportsnaut is reporting that Chandler Smith will join Joe Gibbs Racing next season. That's right, the 21-year-old driver will join Toyota and JGR's Xfinity Series team after spending a year with Kaulig Racing and Chevrolet. Chandler Smith is wrapping up his rookie Xfinity Series season. He's got 1 win on the year, 8 top 5s. He's in the playoffs and actually still championship eligible. He enters today's race at Homestead, Miami, only 15 points below the championship 4 cutoff. And I saw earlier today, according to his X account, he just welcomed, I think, his 2nd child into the world. So congratulations, already a huge weekend for Chandler Smith and his family. But yes, according to Matt Weaver and Sportsnaut, I'll link the full article down in the description below, Chandler Smith is expected to buy out the remaining years of his Kaulig Racing contract. An official announcement of Smith to JGR is expected this coming Monday, and it's expected that Sheldon Creed will be his Xfinity Series teammate in 2024. There's a lot of different angles we could attack this from. Let's start with that first point, the buyout. The way it's worded in that Sportsnaut article, it sounds like Chandler Smith and his group were able to buy out his own contract. A couple weeks ago when these rumors first surfaced, I mentioned how it may be difficult to ask Joe Gibbs Racing to buy out Chandler Smith's contract, especially when Toyota has other young, talented drivers in their pipeline like Corey Heim, Jesse Love, etc. So if Chandler Smith and his group, his sponsors, whomever, if they're working that part out themselves, that makes Toyota and JGR's decision a lot easier, so that makes sense. And speaking of Corey Heim in particular, he announced just a few days ago that he's staying in trucks. He signed an extension with Tricon Garage. Maybe he didn't have the sponsorship that JGR was looking for on the Xfinity Series side, because I think Corey Heim has the talent. Or maybe Toyota and JGR just like Chandler Smith and perhaps Sheldon Creed that much. But we'll talk more about Sheldon Creed in a few moments. The second part of this report, an official announcement, is expected Monday. I get why Toyota would want Chandler Smith back. Not only is he a good young race car driver, but Toyota has already invested several years worth of late model and truck series resources into this kid. From Chandler Smith's perspective, heck yeah, if a JGR Xfinity Series seat is available, he should jump at it. Any driver would. I guess I'm still confused as to why he ever left Toyota for Kaulig Racing in the first place. Remember, a year ago, Chandler Smith signed a 3-year deal with Kaulig and Chevrolet, was talking about the family atmosphere, how he felt this was the right move for his family long term. These are all things Chandler Smith said a year ago about Kaulig and Chevrolet. It was kind of a head scratcher at the time, so I guess good for him that he was able to come back to Toyota. It always felt like that's kind of where he belongs. Chandler Smith now becomes probably the next in line to go Cup Series racing on the Toyota side. Now, Toyota has a very young Cup Series driver lineup, like Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace, John Hunter Nemechek, Eric Jones, Tyler Reddick. They're all 30 years old or younger. Denny Hamlin's an older guy, but he just signed a multi-year extension, so really Martin Truex Jr. is it. He's the only older veteran on the Cup side who's sort of taking things year by year. Chandler Smith, I think, now becomes the Bass Pro Prince, if you will. He's next in line for the 19-car throne, should Martin Truex Jr. choose to hang things up maybe after next season. The third element of this Sports Knot report, Sheldon Creed. I think it was reporter Lee Spencer a few days ago, who first name-dropped Sheldon Creed as a JGR candidate. And it makes sense. Last week, Sheldon Creed shockingly announced that he would not be returning to RCR next season. It certainly sounds like it was his decision to leave, and you don't just walk out on an RCR Xfinity Series ride unless you have something equally, if not better, lined up. There aren't many teams in the Xfinity Series better than RCR, but Joe Gibbs Racing perhaps is one of them. It doesn't sound like there's an announcement imminent, but Sheldon Creed joining Chandler Smith at JGR next year seems very likely. Unfortunately, this makes it sound like Ryan Truex could be out of luck. There was a report, I think last week, that Ryan Truex was still trying to drum up enough funding to go full-time Xfinity racing with JGR. That sounds all but off the table at this point. Sure, JGR could turn that all-star car into a full-time entry primarily for Ryan Truex, but if you ask me, more than likely we'll see Ryan Truex drive a JGR car part-time again next year. He got a win racing part-time this year, so it's still a great opportunity for him to get his name out there. Like I said, we're attacking this from all angles. Let's talk about Toyota's driver pipeline. We've talked a lot about Ford's driver pipeline in recent weeks, how it's kind of feeling a bit bare, especially with Zane Smith leaving for Chevrolet. Toyota right now is the exact opposite. Toyota has a really solid, really young driver development pipeline. Outside of presumably Sheldon Creed, who even he's only like 26 years old, the rest of Toyota's development drivers right now are very young and I think very talented. Chandler Smith is 21. Corey Heim, leading the Truck Series points right now technically, is only 21 years old. Jesse Love just dominated the ARCA Menard Series for what that's worth, is 18. William Sawalich, a lot of folks high on Sawalich, is only 17. And heck, Jade Avedizian, 17 years old. She just became the first woman to win a national midget championship in the Extreme Outlaw Midget Series. Talented, young, none of these drivers I just named, with the exception maybe being Chandler Smith, are going to be Cup Series ready for at least a couple of years. And that includes Sheldon Creed. I get that he's older, but the dude hasn't been able to win a race in 2 years with RCR. He's good, but I need to see more. Love, Sawalich, Avedizian, Heim, lots of young, raw talent with plenty of time to develop. There's no rush. Martin Truex Jr. could retire in the next year or so. Chandler Smith could fill that seat. In a pinch, Sheldon Creed could fill that seat. You could always go out and sign someone else. Toyota's not desperate for Cup Series talent right now, so they can take their time and develop many of these young drivers I'm talking about. Toyota is in a very good spot, I believe. And lastly, the final angle I want to approach this from, Kaulig Racing. Think about this time roughly a year ago. AJ Allmendinger was moving back up to the Cup Series full time. They had a young, interesting Justin Haley as his teammate. They just snatched one of Toyota's top prospects in Chandler Smith. And joining him in Xfinity was a recent Xfinity Series champion, Daniel Hemrick. Things were looking up for Kaulig Racing 12 months ago. Now, Justin Haley walked. Fine. They promoted Daniel Hemrick to Cup, which I guess is fine. But now it sounds like they're more than likely going to demote AJ Allmendinger back to the Xfinity Series, even though he just won a Cup Series race, all because he doesn't bring enough funding, I suppose. And then to pile on top of all of that, that top prospect they lured away from Toyota? Yeah, now he's come crawling back to Toyota less than a year later. I get that racing is a tough business, and Matt Collig for many years has largely funded Collig Racing out of his own pocket. Collig Racing's model at some point needed to change. I can't be mad at them for that. It's what they have to do. But as a fan, it's disappointing to see all that hype from a year ago kind of go nowhere. Now it feels like they're sort of just spinning their gears. They're running in place. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe Collig finds someone great for that Xfinity car that Chandler Smith is now leaving. Maybe they do. I'm not sure who they could get. Let me know down in the comment section below. Who's a likely candidate in your eyes? Who's someone interesting or talented that could take Chandler Smith's place? Give me some ideas. Probably gonna need some funding. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm rooting for Collig Racing. They're one of the most fun organizations to cheer for in all of NASCAR these days. I want to see them do well. That's gonna do it for this episode, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. I will be at Homestead Miami Speedway today and tomorrow, so if you're coming out and you see me, feel free to come say hi. Big day of racing today. Trucks and Xfinity have a double header, both playoff races, and then tomorrow, the Forever 400, second race of the round of 8 for the NASCAR Cup Series. A lot of great racing at Homestead this weekend. I will talk to you all again very, very soon. Take it easy, folks.